Welcome to FAM, a podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of the creators shaping our cultural landscape today. Tonight, we're really excited because we have someone who embodies the power of the U-turn, quite literally and figuratively as well. Ashley Stahl is a counter-terrorism professional turned career coach, international best-selling author of U-Turn, and a TEDx speaker whose talks have been viewed over 12 million times worldwide. Her 2019 TEDx at Leiden University, How to Figure Out What You Really Want, is one of the top 100 most watched talks on YouTube's TEDx channel. And what makes Ashley's story extraordinary is how she transformed what appeared to be a career suicide, walking away from a six-figure Pentagon job in her early 20s, into becoming one of the most sought-after career experts of our time. She's helped thousands of people figure out who they really are, not just what they want, not just what they love, and has built a multi-million-dollar business teaching people how to make their own U-turns. But perhaps most remarkably, she turned one of the most traumatic days of her family's life, when her father received a fake kidnapping call about her, into the opening story of her viral TEDx talk, showing us how our deepest pain can become our greatest message. Please welcome best-selling author Ashley Stahl, everybody.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Thanks for the bio. I've never heard it like that. That was
quite impressive.
Boost. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for spending time with us tonight. And, I really wanted to start with that very first speech ever at TEDx and how that talk went viral. So how does someone go from never speaking publicly to commanding a stage at Berkeley and starting a viral talk?
So I have a speaking agency right now called Wise Whisper. And the title of the agency is really about intuition, like being able to connect to yourself. And I know that it's really hard to be in your heart. Like, we live in a world that it is so hard to feel because we're so overstimulated. And I mean, we all know this. So for me, my first TEDx talk, I never spoken before in my life. And what I learned from that talk is that there's a really big difference between telling people a story and painting a picture for somebody and bringing them into your story as if they're on a magic school bus with you in your life. And when it comes to YouTube channels or TEDx or speaking platforms, I always tell our clients that going viral may not be easy, but it is simple. Like, simply write the best talk of your life. And if you're not the best writer you've ever met, get help. And that's what really sparked the agency that I have now. But as far as the talk, I don't think that everybody needs to have what I like to call a quick win story. Like, a lot of speakers will come in for TEDx talks with us, and they'll say to me, like, I don't have a crazy story. I haven't had a crazy life. And I always remind them of what Martin Scorsese says. It's one of my favorite quotes. He says, "What's most personal is most creative." Mm-hmm. And that really stuck with me. And it made me think of a client we had. She was an energy healer doing a TEDx talk. And she said that to me. She's like, I don't have any crazy stories. And I went through her intake form with my team. And she had this moment that I'll never forget. She was, and I could see that she still had like all sorts of feelings about this moment. She was talking about how when she was in high school, she was at a party, and in her words, she said, I was pudgy and uncomfortable and kind of nerdy. And she's at this party, and one of the girls at the party came up to her and said, hey, so-and-so wants to talk to you. And it was like the kid's house, whoever, and he was popular. And she like ran to the bathroom and like zhuzhed her hair and like did whatever you do. And through the crack of the door, she heard the girls say to him, oh, she's going to come talk to you. And he said, ew, I don't want to talk to her. And she had to walk out of the door, past them. And she said that took a toll on her confidence for 10 years. And when it comes to storytelling, I think we all have a story. So many people come in and they want to say something. They kind of feel like a racehorse, and they're stuck in a stable and they have all this energy, but they don't know where to put it or what to say. And so I always tell people, like, if you don't have a crazy story, you don't need one. Like, that's not what you need to become this big speaker or communicator.
Yeah, we all have our own story, and that story is so unique to anyone else because our story is different than everyone else's story. So it's all about tapping into your story. So, taking a step back for a second here, you grew up in a pretty politically charged household. I think you've said that, your dad and your uncle would have debates, politically heated debates every Sunday. I'm curious how these early experiences shaped your worldview and ultimately led you into counterterrorism and the Pentagon job as a first step in your career.
Yeah, I know. I don't really look the part. I feel like, I grew up in a house, like the news was always on. And I kind of knew what was happening in the world from a young age. And I feel like I probably had a limited scope of information. Just the news is not always the best scope, obviously. Yeah. But, and I had opinions. And I remember getting to college and being kind of surprised when you have to pick a major. And I was under the belief that your major dictates what you do. I feel like a lot of college students think that. I don't know what world we're in right now with that, but, that's what I thought at the time. And I mean, now I know that only, 20% or so of people are working a job that has to do with their degree. Right. But I remember seeing 9/11 and my family, I have a lot of family in New Jersey, and they were really impacted by it. And I remember watching the towers. I feel like everybody remembers where they were. And that's how your memory works, right? Like snowstorms, like crazy weather events or personal life events. Like that's how our memory works. We capture the memory. So I remember watching the Twin Towers and thinking to myself, I know I was in LA at the time, so I was not in New York, thinking, wow, I really want to help. And I didn't really know who I was at the time because obviously I'm in high school, which is so weird. We go to college and we're somehow supposed to like put some sort of shingle in the ground of who we are. And I think what I really wanted deep down was to matter and to do something that would make an impact. And I just thought, I've always been a protector and a helper. And I just thought this is like the highest possible way that I can make an impact. I've also always been pretty good with languages. And so I just thought I'm going to use my linguistic abilities to help the world and work in intelligence. And I literally did everything for that career.
So yeah, you landed this 6-figure job at the Pentagon at 23 years old, which was incredible. And you said that you realized you were in the wrong place on the very first day.
Yeah.
So what happened that made you think, oh shit, I made a terrible mistake?
That's so funny. Nobody's ever asked me that before, but I actually think it's really important, not just about that, but about life. Like, I think especially with people, like people are showing you who they are all the time. Situations are giving you feedback all the time. And I think because we're such an intellectual culture and we, like I said, it's hard to get to our heart. We want to intellectualize when something's not working and understand why. But sometimes we don't need to know why. All we need to know is it's not working, I don't know. I just got there and I remember my first day. Oh God, I haven't thought about this in so long. There's this guy and he was the head of the Republican golf club at his college. And I mean, no judgment, just that's the picture. And he had the same job as me. But he was kind of there to train me. And I remember walking in, and I was a defense contractor. So I was in the Pentagon half the time, and I was in an office half the time. We were in the Pentagon that day, and you don't get a window at the Pentagon unless you're important, So I was like in the center of it, in this basement. And I remember I didn't have a desk, and I need a desk because I was supposed to write intel reports. And I was assigned to Afghanistan. And I remember I said, hey, where's my desk? And he's like, girl, this is like Afghanistan. You need to earn your desk.
Wow.
And he meant it. And I met this woman there. Her name, I call her in my book Jeanette, just to protect her name. But she was like my little guardian angel. And I remember she overheard that and she grabbed like a filing cabinet and dusted it off and like scooted it in for me. And so for the first like couple months of my job in Intel, I had a little dresser situation with a laptop in a basement in DOD.
And that's when you knew.
Yeah, I mean, say less, right? Yeah. Like it didn't look like a fun time. And I think when you're younger, you don't totally realize. I feel like as you get older, there's so many moments, don't you think, where you're like, oh, people used to tell me I would get why this mistake happened later. And then you have the later and you're like, oh, wow, that's a real thing. I feel like I was just so young. I didn't have experience and I wasn't fully landing into what I was doing. Also, I was overseeing a program for Afghanistan and I was deploying a lot of people that were civilians, and insider attacks were on the rise during that time. So I was deploying some people that I would spend 6 weeks with and registering in the first day that some of those people wouldn't come home. And I was befriending them, and they would go because they get danger pay. Like, you get a huge bonus for going. And I just realized, like, oh, I'm way too sensitive for this. Like, what was I thinking? And I think as a career expert, back in the day, I haven't a career coach in a while, but what I found is there's a really big difference between the skill set, the what of what you're doing, and the how of how you do it. And what I mean by that is the what is about your skill set, right? It's about how you're using your body, your mind, your heart, your thoughts throughout the day. Everybody has a gift. Not everybody knows what that is, but everybody has a gift. The how is how you do it. That's your core values, right? So my gift was communication in words, and I was writing reports and doing all these things with that. But my core values were completely incompatible with what I was doing. For example, honesty. Like, I really value that. And it's not like in my top 20, it's in my top 5, I was in a job that you have to lie.
Tell us more about that. What is it about, working in counterterrorism where you have to lie?
Yeah, I mean, when you have a clearance, you get information and you kind of have to, and I'm a straight shooter. And so something's usually all over my face. So what was I thinking trying to work towards being an actual spy when I'm the worst liar? But I just remember there are so many things I would see on my computer screen, and I would think to myself, well, I'm not at liberty to process this with anybody. So I would just kind of swallow it and go home. And I don't know, I think you're only as sick as your secrets, And I don't know, I just could kind of feel as a sensitive person, all those secrets would make me sick.
What were some of the sickest secrets ever? Give us the spill the beans. The sickest secrets of the secret agents.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's no secrets that have been declassified, but what I can say is that I left DOD and I worked in a private intelligence company, and I did a lot of work with hostage and ransom. And this isn't a secret, but it does kind of crack me up for some reason, which is kind of dark. But if you're held hostage in a foreign country, they'll usually ask for 3 or 400K, but you actually can negotiate down to 17K.
This is good to know.
Yeah, so I just think that's kind of funny. I'm they really asked for the stars and or they asked for the moon, but
texting my parents right now before my next trip to Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so speaking of hostages, your TEDx talk opens with a really harrowing account of you, or rather your dad, receiving a fake kidnapping call about you. You were in your Beverly Hills office doing a podcast interview while your dad was being told by strangers that they had kidnapped you and were going to kill you. Can you walk us through what happened from your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really common scam. And one thing I didn't expect when this talk went viral was that I'd get over 500 messages over the years of people being like, hey, this scam happened to me, but because I saw your TED Talk, I knew it was a scam. I'm like, that's a crazy unintended effect. But the short of it was I was recording a podcast, so my phone was on Don't Disturb. I saw, when people can break through Don't Disturb, I saw a lot of notifications, didn't think anything of it. And once I was done, I saw a text and it said, this is the police, Los Angeles police. We're with your father, please call us. And then I thought maybe it's a scam, but I called anyway and figured, let me see what they're doing. It was the police, and they were like, are you safe? That was the first thing they asked me. And I said, yeah, I'm safe. And then they started screaming, she's safe, she's safe. And my dad got on the phone. So I guess meanwhile, back at the ranch, for my dad, he got a phone call a random afternoon on I think it was a Friday. And he was just in the kitchen, and the call was basically, and I didn't know this, but they basically, they don't smile and dial, but they dial and dial. Somebody called and just said, hi, we have your daughter. And they had a girl screaming in the background that, was intended to be me. And that just hijacks your amygdala. You're not even thinking straight at that point. And so I think that there's a lot of scammers that just do this. My dad's like, I don't know how old he was at the time. Like, he's 82 now. I mean, he looks like he's like 55. I think he was like 76 or 75. And he just wasn't equipped to mentally handle that. I mean, it's pretty impressive. He thinks pretty well under pressure. So he was in his imagination, which this happens to a lot of people. He didn't know, like, are they close by? Like, where is she? Are they here? Do they see me? Who are these people? Very common. And they gave him instructions. They said, follow everything we are telling you to do or we're going to kill her. And then he was like, well, can I talk to her? And they started like making hitting sounds and like making the girl scream louder. And they got him to drive to Walmart to wire his life savings and his bank account. But in the process, he was smart enough to write on a napkin for my mom to see, but he didn't want them to hear her voice because in his imagination, he was scared that they saw them through the window or something. So he wrote like, call 911, like Ashley's kidnapped. He also had every reason to think that. Like, I worked in national security. I dealt with kidnap and ransom all the time. I started building a little brand situation, and so I guess it wasn't totally far off for him to think that. And yeah, by the time I called the police back, he was about to wire the funds and they were all like outside of the bank. And he stopped before he hit the wire. Yeah. Yeah. And then when he got on the phone with me, like, he just broke down, and it's just, I feel like no matter how old or young you are, like, there's just something about your parents where it's like you don't really know what to do when they're like that. And so yeah, I just spent a few days with him, and he doesn't watch my TED Talk. He doesn't like to watch
too
what
triggering.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't watch it.
Wow. I mean, that night you wrote in your journal, I'm my own kidnapper, and you listed all the ways that you had held yourself hostage in life.
Yeah.
That's such a profound metaphor, and I mean, it makes me wonder, like, what were some of the biggest ways you felt like you were kidnapping yourself?
Yeah. I think we all do this, and I think a lot of the way that I mean that is that I think we're all so used to justifying things, and I think when you're justifying things, it's kind of like an inner alarm clock can go off, and it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you intellectualizing it? Because usually our mind is trying to protect us from our heart. And it's hard to feel, right? And feeling is uncomfortable because if you actually feel something and you determine that it's true for you, sometimes you need to unravel your whole world, to course correct. And I felt like there were just so many things that I had chosen to do. And I kind of felt like I was kidnapping myself. And I thought about these kidnappers. I'm like, who would have a job like this, especially as a career coach? I'm like, I think about jobs all day long, like, who would choose this? And I just thought they must have not had a better option. Like, that was the only compassionate thing I could come up with. Because, like, I don't know, there's so many other ways to make money, I guess. Maybe they're making a killing. Like, I don't know, pun not intended, but yeah. And so I just remember writing down all the things I was doing because I thought I had to do them. And this is still an exercise I do in my journal in my own way, where I feel like we're all walking around the world carrying, like, what Gestalt, in Gestalt therapy, he calls aspects. And I think about this all the time. So some people are carrying sadness, some people are carrying heartbreak. Like, when we walk around, I almost picture people with labels on their backs, and I don't know what it says, but it's something, it's an aspect. Yeah. And in my journal, often I'll give that aspect a voice. So if it's like sadness, disappointment, it's a trigger, it's something, it's a feeling and I don't know what it is. And I'll give the feeling a voice, and I'll write down everything it's telling me, like as if it was like a troll in my ear. And I'll star the things it's saying that feel true, and I'll forgive myself. Like, I will put my hand over my heart. And I've actually done this, like, even in stressful meetings. Like, I remember when I got my book deal, I had all these like limiting beliefs come to my mind, and I went to the bathroom and I stood there and I didn't have a journal and a pen, but I was like, what is this thing telling me that is like making me feel scared? And I put my hand over my heart, and I would say every single time, I forgive myself for buying into the misunderstanding that. And it's like, whatever this thing is telling me, I forgive myself for buying into the misunderstanding that I shouldn't be here. I forgive myself for buying into the misunderstanding that I'm disappointing. I forgive myself for buying into the misunderstanding that I'm not qualified for this, that I need more experience, that there's somebody better than me that's coming in next, like whatever it is. And then I'll update it and I'll say the truth is. And obviously it's not very potent if you're like, the truth is I am qualified. And you're just like playing ping pong with your mind, you know? But I'll say something like, the truth is I've actually, like, qualifications have nothing to, like, not everything to do with school or university. It's like all the experiences I've had and all the people I've been around that have helped me be qualified for this. And they're very unique, right? And so it has to feel like something deeply true. But that's kind of what I started doing in my journal that night, like all the things I was doing and what is the aspect of me that's driving me to do all these things. And it was fear. So I just gave it a voice, like, what is it telling me and why is it telling me I need to do all these things? And I forgave myself.
It reminds me of this, like, it's like an inside out, these little characters, fear and self-affirmation, just competing with each other.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful experience that led to this book.
Yeah.
You know, your book is called U-Turn.
Yeah.
And the core message is don't do what you love, do what you are.
Yeah.
That goes against everything we're told about following our passion. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, there's this really interesting tool on Google called the Ngram, like the letter N. And if you put a quote in it, like a statement that people say, a colloquialism, it lets you know where the quote kind of began and what year. And it shows you how much it showed up in literature, which if you look at Google, it's really kind of society, like what we're Googling at 3 a.m. And if you look at Follow Your Passion from like 1982 upwards, it just like took off. So it was kind of like the power of something going viral. Somebody said it, everybody liked it, and it felt good. And I actually think sometimes as a society, we are kind of like a bunch of lemmings. You know what I mean? We're just like running around like Chicken Little. The world is ending and we just like listen to things. And so a lot of my career coaching practice was dismantling that because I love cupcakes, but I'm a horrible baker. You know, like being a great consumer of something does not mean you are meant to be a producer in your career of that thing.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. You know, you've talked about this consumer versus producer dynamic. So how can people distinguish between what they enjoy consuming and what they should actually build their careers around?
It starts with your core skill set. I think everybody has a core skill set. And people used to ask me all the time when I was career coaching, before I had my speaking agency, they would say, well, can you have a secondary skill set, a tertiary one? I have like 3 skill sets.
Baking cupcakes.
Yeah. But I think it's really hard to read the label when you're stuck in the jar. It's really hard to see what your gift is. And the research actually shows that there's this really cool book called The Science of Happily Ever After. And it's mostly a book about love and marriage and picking a partner. And it's a database book. It's not like an easy, light read. It's like all data. And one of the pieces of data that struck me the most is that your friends know if your relationship's going to end or you're going to get divorced in that relationship way before you do. And I feel like it's the same case with your career. Like, your friends are neutral observers, just like love, just like work. They're watching and seeing if you're doing well or not. And their only stake and skin in the game is your happiness, your fulfillment, and your well-being. Like if you have good friends, right? And so it's a research-backed question to ask other people, when have you seen me at my best? And I always used to recommend people in their careers to ask people around them and to be very careful with who you ask. Like ask a colleague, ask a dear friend, ask your parents. Parents are one of the most surprising answers because as much as they know us, they kind of don't, right? Like who we become. And it's always interesting to hear, like, what skill set am I using when I'm at my best? My mom was like, when you're communicating, I just remember when I was writing my book, I was telling her, I'm like, oh, I have writer's block. She's like, you don't have talking block, Thanks, Mom.
Smart mom. You now have a company called Wise Whisper that writes and books TED Talks for people. And now you've also written over 40 TED Talks.
Yeah.
What makes a talk go viral versus just being good?
Out of the, we've had about 120 people come in to get our help crafting their talk. And it's not just a TED talk, it's kind of like an everything talk, but they can park it on TED. And then we get them, so we secure their spot for TEDx. We've done over 120 of these, and about 70%, 65% of them have gone viral. Like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And people always ask me all the time, like, is it too late? And I'm like, it's too late if your talk is boring, like give it your best. And if you give it your best, it's not too late. Like 43 million subscribers never really go out of style. And I kind of feel like the TED channel and TEDx channel is like marketing on steroids, which is why that's what we're offering the most. But as far as the ones that go viral, number one, you can kind of feel it. I would say, kind of going back to what I said when we started, like the magic school bus, I've given lectures often before around the different types of storytelling there is. And there's two types we use the most at Wise Whisper that I think make the most impact. And I think anybody here, whether you are a content creator, a writer, whatever kind of content you're doing, or you're just having conversations or you're doing pitches at work, the storytelling I like the most is called flashback storytelling. That's what we call it at Wise Whisper. I have a team of 20 people, and it's a term that we throw around all the time, like what's the flashback? And there's two types of flashbacks we like to look at. One is the quick win story, which is like the kidnapping story. That's like some crazy shit, right? So that story is going to be something that people are going to pay attention to because it's an open loop and it's just insane. I'm trying to think of a client that had like a really crazy opener recently. It will come to me because there's so many of them. Like one of them recently, the talk that talks come through my desk, that's my role, is to oversee these talks. Rough draft came through just this morning. And it was about a client of mine who the speechwriter wrote about how it's a talk about trauma. And she opens up the talk saying, when I woke up on Tuesday morning, I wasn't in 2025. And she said, when I woke up on Tuesday, I was 7 years old and I was about to see my sister get abducted again. So that's a quick win. No, I mean, it's not a quick win. The abduction part, and the sister's okay. Sister's okay. Her TED Talk's not out yet, but that's a quick win story. So that always works, but you're not always looking to be like the trigger warning, right? Like you don't need to be the clickbait. And then it's kind of going back to that energy healer that had that personal story. But what both of those stories are doing is they're bringing people into a moment. And that's why on our intake form, we ask a lot of speakers, because we have speakers that are really established and we have speakers that are brand new speakers coming in. And then we have like executives that are like, oh, this TED thing seems like a good idea. I should just do this. All of them, I ask the same question. I say, what are 10 moments from your life that changed the way you think? What are 10 conversations, moments, maybe ones you've never thought about and that you're thinking about now chronologically? So we give them the instruction of going back in time from when they were a kid to now. And the problem with people who don't think about stories, but they need to tell them, is that they think about events. They don't think about moments. And that's the difference. So
how would you distinguish an event from a moment?
Yeah, like my wedding, my graduation day, those are events. But the conversation you had backstage at graduation that like made you realize that this was like one of your bigger days, that's a moment. For example, if I said to you, I'm making this up. If I said to you, I saw my brother at the beach, we had a tense conversation, I'm feeling better now. That's a event, like that happened. But if you said to me, Johnny, like, how are you doing? And I was like, yesterday at like 9:45 a.m., I met my brother at the beach and the sand was like ice cold. And I looked up at him and he had tears in his eyes and I kind of knew we were going to have a big talk. That's a moment. And when you can bring people in the moment, you can bring people into the magic school bus of your life, you build a connection and you build trust. And luckily, I try to take on good people so that I don't feel like I'm using my powers for bad forces. But there's a lot of power when you can bring people into a moment. And, a lot of people will say to me, and people in job interviews will say this all the time, like, I don't want to prepare those moments. I don't want to think in advance of those moments. It's not authentic. But if you think of the Latin root, author, authentic, the Latin root means to create. And I think there's nothing more creative and intentional than creating and deciding what you want to say. Because a lot of the times we're running around just saying what comes off the cuff. And it's not actually, how many times have you said something on the spot? You're like, that's not even what I think. But somehow people are like, that's authentic. It's in the moment. And I'm like, that's not even what you actually have to say. So I've really tried to encourage a lot of, and speakers who are really high paid that come in, they call it bits and bobs. And so they'll do the bits and bobs. They call it bits and bobs because when they're on stage, maybe they'll grab a bit like, oh, that story is working with this audience. I'm going to throw it in. And it's really valuable for speakers to understand what their bits and bobs are, because especially if you're on a panel or there's Q&A from the audience, you can pull your bits or your bobs off the shelf. So that's what we try to do
really
with moments.
cute.
Yeah.
Bits and bobs. Sounds kind of like an exotic dish.
I know, it's like a formal term. Like they literally call it that.
That's awesome. So you've taken this advice and you've helped thousands of people now with their U-turns. I'm curious, like now that you've done this so many times, what's like the most common thing that you see holding people back?
I mean, we've seen all the like meme, it's not a meme, I don't know what the word is, like GIFs of people being like, there's someone more qualified than you or less qualified than you doing the thing you want to do. I hate to say it, but it is really the mind. And I think the biggest challenge that I see with people in their mind is what we hear, like who you surround yourself with. And so I've tasked a couple clients, like, and I haven't done this in forever because again, I just haven't career coached so long, but I used to tell clients, especially ones that weren't surrounded by the right people, I'd be like, fine, keep your friends. Like, no problem. You're not going to hire me and I'm going to tell you to let go of all your friends. That feels sad. Unless they're really bad friends, then I'll tell you. But make a dinner reservation for 4 in 2 months. And that would be when the coaching package would be over. And I'd be like, and it was like their little graduation. And I'd be like, your job is to meet interesting people and to just notice it. And, in that task, there would be momentum, right? Like they would say to somebody, oh, I'm hosting this dinner. There's 4 people coming. Do you want to come? Like they're all entrepreneurs or they're all creatives. And they were like in manifestation. So the first person would be like, sure. And she'd be like, cool, I'll send you an invite. And then the next person, oh, I'm hosting this dinner. I have a reservation. This other person is this author or whatever they are. Do you want to come? It's entrepreneurs that we're doing. Yeah, of course. And so that's how she built new friends. And she did it pretty quickly. And so, yeah, I think that the mind is your biggest frenemy that you have. And that's why I've spent so much of my time working on it. Like I don't know, my friend Ophi's here. She's wearing like evil eyes. And sometimes I have like so many of my evil eyes and like my meditation classes I've taken and stuff like that. I'm always trying to, and shout out to Ophi, say hi to Ophi, she's fun. I'm always trying to work on my mind.
Yeah. I mean, mine is a muscle that you have to exercise. And I really love the way you use affirmations and mantras as a way to, really almost brainwash yourself, but in a good way, right? So for someone who's listening right now who may feel stuck, they know something needs to change, but they're paralyzed by their mind. What's the first concrete step that they can take today?
I mean, clarity comes from engagement, right? It doesn't come from thought. And so I would say if you're feeling cut off, the first order of business is to come back home, which to me means who are the people, what are the places, what are the things that make you feel like you? And I have a lot of friends I love. There's certain ones that I'm like extra unhinged with in the best way, where I'm like, they make me feel like me, like I'm so free. And it feels good to feel good. So when you start to get around the people that bring you back to homeostasis, you can start to feel the no's because you're feeling so many yeses with the things you're doing outside of work or whatever the thing is you're feeling stuck with. Yeah, I used to take dance classes, the beach. I used to live in LA. Like I would go to the beach all the time, just put my feet in the sand and bring my journal. Brings me back to homeostasis. So I would say like, don't make any decisions because you can't trust your mind when it's being weird. Like if you're in a low vibration, that's not the time to listen to your mind. And I'm lucky enough, I have friends that will say that to me. Like I've had a friend literally say, don't trust your mind right now. Like, and because I've chosen such special people, I can borrow their clarity. And it's not about me not having a sense of self. It's about me understanding when I'm out of business. Like, so I say that's the first thing. I would say the second thing is like, I don't know, I used to say CCC, clarity comes from conversations. And so sometimes I used to wake up and be like, oh, I'm in a plateau. Like, what do I do with this? And I would say, I guess I need to have more conversations. And, you know, I'm kind of a weirdo in that sense. So like, you know, peanut butter aisle at the grocery store, like, oh, what are you picking? Like, I will talk to somebody. And the magic about it is that you never know who you're talking to. I feel like there's a scarcity sometimes, not in events like this, but in like networking events where sometimes people think that there's a certain person they need to be talking to, and then they miss who they're actually talking to. So yeah, like whenever I feel stuck, I'm like, oh, looks like I need to have more conversations and get into other people's world. Because if you're feeling tight in your world, or somebody's telling you something and it's making you feel tight, to me, that just means like you're stuck in someone else's frame and you need to get out. Like that's not your frame.
I love that. Clarity comes from conversations. Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for the conversation tonight. And thank you for all the great advice.
Thanks for having me.